Welcome, everyone. We're going to talk more about scaling some sales processes today. So, in light of that quick overview of what we're going to discuss, we'll go over some quick introductions of who I am and what I do, and really how we build out a prospecting system for our clients. And then I'll teach you some overall processes that I recommend, both for the teams that we lead and that we work with, as well as things that you can copy on your own. Overall, how to leverage lead scoring applications, and how to develop your own performance and KPIs. So a little bit about me. I lead our sales and client strategy when I'm not working. I do have a wife and a son. We live in Philadelphia. If you're ever in the big city of Philly, let me know. Would love to show you around. I'm relatively new here, but here's a bit of what like the typical lead generation process looks like for a sales team. So imagine you're a BDR, you're a head of demand gen, you're a full cycle account exec, and so on. This is what a lot of people are doing when they don't have tech to support their pipeline. It looks like going into LinkedIn, finding manually like which prospects you want to engage with, sending individual messages. Hey, just thought we could connect, inviting people for coffee. If you can only imagine how many coffee dates you've been on at this point. And then there's going to be just additional follow-up. Hey, haven't heard back anything lately. What do you think? Conversations like that. Did you miss my last email? I promise you, it did not miss your last email or your last LinkedIn. And all this results in poor conversion rates. If you know the story of Sisyphus and the boulder, it's just pushing it up the hill. And it keeps falling down, and it's really, really frustrating. And I think if we're really honest with ourselves, some version of this is true for the majority of us. And it's really hard, right? And so when there's poor conversion rates, when there's a lack of lead flow, it just results in less conversion rate, less revenue for the company. There are downstream effects that really affect every team at your company, and it's tough, right? So instead, we recommend something a little different, something more like this. And it starts with doing a good deal of upfront work to really launch all of this, but the dividends it pays out are huge. So the first thing we recommend is a go-to-market strategy. And by the way, we run these same steps whenever we're advising on our own clients, right? So to develop a go-to-market strategy, it's really a larger conversation that you would have internally. Who do we like to work with? Who are our happiest clients? Who do we create the best results for? And then who are the kinds of companies that are just like them? And we call this an ideal customer profile. And then you're going to want to go find all of their contact information. So you're going to want to all at the same time, and I'll talk more about this later on in this conversation, but you're going to want to guide yourself through pulling context all at the same time. So you have an Excel spreadsheet of hundreds, perhaps thousands of prospects. You can use sources like LinkedIn, like ZoomInfo, like Apollo, like Seamless, like Deal Signal, and so on. There are many out there, and you should have access to one of these. Once you pull that list, you're going to want to segment it out. So maybe you work, I'm just going to spitball. Maybe you work with two very different industries. So maybe you have a great success with financial services. Maybe you have great success with IT companies. Well, they talk to people differently. They have different things they care about. So you're going to want to segment those lists appropriately and handle your copywriting in a way that speaks very candidly to each group, right? So the way you talk to a financial services firm is going to be very different than an IT company. And even within that, there are more segments. So you need to think through that. And then you begin building out a cadence and doing some automated outreach. So the go-to-market strategy is like one really big step. It's probably the most important step. It's the foundation of all of this, right? Then you're going to want to get, like I was saying, an automated system to begin running the outreach. So there's a lot of great systems out there. Your CRM probably has something like this. In any case, you're going to want to make it where it comes across in a really personalized way. That automated outreach, it does not need to be pretty. It does not need to have pictures. The links can even be at a minimum. Instead, what we recommend people do is having very simple, very personalized outreach at scale, right? So it's the same message to a couple hundred people, but it's segmented towards their ideal customer profile. And so it feels like a handwritten note, not a flyer in the mail. So once you have your lists and your messaging, your automated outreach, you're not prospecting manually anymore. It's all running in the background, and you can get back to doing other revenue generating activities. That could be actually having calls with people. That could be going to visit people in person. It could be a whole bunch of other things that you're probably responsible for on the day to day, rather than having to sleuth through LinkedIn DMs every day, right? And what we run, we have a free lead scoring application. It's the NerdWise app. You can go get it in the Apple App Store. You can get it in the Android store. And basically, you can connect this to your outreach, right? It doesn't have to be ours. I don't have a strong preference there. I won't hold it against you if you don't use ours, but you're going to need some ability to track your data to see who's showing the most interest. So you can then begin retargeting those, right? The difference that ours makes versus like others is a lot of them exist in a dashboard. And dashboards are great. It helps you get a really good picture of things, but it's not tactical enough to re-engage people. Ours allows you to do the next step, which is targeted follow through. So our app allows you to see who's showing the most interest and when. And this results in higher conversion rates because you're able to call and message people on LinkedIn in addition to those other activities. And so this is a heightened awareness mid-cycle of that outreach campaign. So it feels really intentional. Like I've had people that have messaged me on LinkedIn or just to follow me or connect with me, then they'll send me an email, then I'll get a text or a voicemail. It's like, okay, I can tell this person isn't being flippant. They're serious and they want to talk to me. I can give them at least 5 minutes. And then that person's welcome to, try and pitch me on a demo. Anyone here, if you want to, I don't know if you want to book time and try and sell me something, but a level of intentionality like that does go a long way. You're welcome to attempt. You're welcome to try this process at large with that. So I want to define a few terms. People ask me a lot when I'm meeting with them on an introductory call, what kind of leads am I going to get? Or how many leads are you going to engage each week? So I want to define a few terms to make sure we're all speaking the same language here. So I will use terms, and I probably already used them plenty here, but I'll use terms like prospect. These are people in your addressable market that you are going to begin engaging, but they've never responded to you, right? So that's a prospect. You are imagine it's the gold rush in 1849 in California, and you're prospecting for gold, but the gold has not shown up yet, right? So you are prospecting after those people. Now, we consider a lead someone that is showing interest. There are two types of leads: sales qualified leads, marketing qualified leads. A marketing qualified lead is someone that is showing signals of interest that you can follow up with and continue to engage, think targeted follow through. A sales qualified lead is, yeah, I'll meet with you. Here's my calendar link, or send me your calendar link. Let's talk, right? Email automation is like a scalable tool. I don't think I covered a lot of platforms, but in the last slide, but I can real quick. Some would be like Woodpecker, Reply.io. I think Mailshake is also one. Could be wrong there. You can also do this from HubSpot and Salesforce and Pipedrive and so forth, but some level of email automation. Your total addressable market. Now, there's a phenomenal book I want to plug here. It's called Obviously Awesome by April Dunford. If you want to link to that, send me a message in the chat, and I'll be glad to grab the link from Amazon for you. But building out your total addressable market is really the types of individuals that you want to focus on. If you're saying today, oh, we can work with everyone, that should be a red flag. Of course, you can work with a lot of different people, but who are the ideal customers? That's going to help you narrow down your targeting and your messaging overall, right? And then lead scoring is some sort of application like ours or like others where you can actually rank the perceived value of a lead. This, and to kind of give some more depth here, this really could be based off of their engagement. That's how we use it. But it could also be based on a CEO lead is probably going to be worth more. No offense to all my, let's say, account executive friends out there. A CEO lead is probably going to be worth more than someone with a job title of account executive. So ranking system in some way that makes sense to your business is going to be really wise to have there. So then you can begin understanding the conversion rates and tracking the data across, well, our conversion rate on CEOs is X versus our conversion rate on directors of operations or so forth, right? So here's kind of a version of how one would build out that process. And I probably went a bit too in depth in the beginning, so that maybe this can be a bit faster. Go-to-market plan allows you to organize and prioritize towards your total addressable market or your ideal customer profile. Then you're going to begin running the messaging or building out the messaging and the approved prospect lists, We always send these to our clients to review and approve. You're going to want to comb through this before you send out a single email, meaning you're going through that prospect list one by one. Even if there's 1,000, maybe it takes you an hour. Just get you a big cup of coffee and crush it, right? Essentially, what you want to do here is make sure there's no current clients, no competitors, no like friends and family that would be really surprised that you're emailing them, right? So you can kick those people out and make sure you don't engage them, right? Sometimes if you're pulling a really large list, those can sneak in there, and you want to make sure to avoid them because it can be a sticky situation if you don't. Same with the messaging. I personally have horrible grammar. I will send it to several friends. I'll send my copy to several different friends or my wife or whomever. Can you just double check me before I send this out? I highly recommend you do that. Typos, even though you might want to seem like, oh yeah, we are, this is sent only to you, and I'll misspell a few things. I find that people don't take well to that, but I'm open to alternative views there. Then you begin running that automated outreach, and you begin receiving MQLs. Now, our process is so that there's additional targeted follow through within this funnel. So if you put on your sales development rep or business development rep hat, this is additional follow through on the outbound cadence, following up to the same people by phone and by LinkedIn while those emails are going out, ultimately leading towards the core of the sales process where you're actually demoing the product, understanding what the customer or client wants, filling out their needs and so forth, and then hopefully negotiating and closing some deals, right?
You have a question from Alan in the Q&A, and I think this would be a good time to answer that one. He's interested in understanding best practices for prospecting, including cadence. So how many times per week, total amount, when to give up, when to start back up again?
Great question, Alan. So my process is maybe different than your process. So I would take this as a data point, not as the infallible truth. So in light of that, here's kind of what we do. We recommend, I think it is a 16-point cadence that includes email outreach, phone calls, and LinkedIn messages. But essentially what it does is it just allows you to have a predictable process. So you can come in and sit down every morning and say, okay, these are the calls I need to make. These are the people I need to follow up with on LinkedIn. We currently use a few different processes, but usually in terms of email cadence, for example, we typically do 4 to 6 touch points. The first 4 touch points will be over the course of about 2 weeks. That's what we have found works really well. And it gives us a scalable process and one that is repeatable for clients over time. Other people prefer to do once a week. I do think a few messages, maybe 1 or 2 a week, is probably good because it keeps you in front of people. The thing there is it's not the best to say, hey, just following up. Did you see my last email? I don't love those, but something to get your name back at the top of the inbox where you are creating additional value in each email, I think is really wise. And then depending on your total addressable market, so getting to your point around when to give up, if you have a huge market with thousands and thousands of potential companies you can work with, you probably can give up sooner, right? Where, hey, I've called 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 or 5. And so, we're going to be on to the next one, right? And then maybe we'll come back a few months later. But if you have a relatively small addressable market, like for example, my first job in sales, I was a cold caller for a trucking company in Birmingham, Alabama. Trucking technology company. We sold to trucking companies. There was a limited amount of trucking companies that we could work with. So I called them a lot because there was only a certain number of companies I could work with in my territory. So they might hear from me 2 or 3 times a month. And if I'm not connecting with someone, I'm going to keep trying, right? So there is a level of nuance there. Hope that was a helpful answer to you. From here, I do want to plug the remaining 5 weeks we have in this webinar series. So obviously today we're talking about how to scale this process. Next week, we're going to dive into how to make a data-driven go-to-market plan, how to optimize that. And then there'll be others from here. So would love to have you all join us again. I think personally, really excited to dive in on the messaging side of things, but the rest of this, I think, will be quite a bit of fun for us. From here, there's a process I learned maybe a few years ago. So I love to read. I have tons of books behind me. It's like the one area of my life where I'm like relatively frivolous. I love to buy new books. But for the rest of my other areas of my life, I'm pretty minimalistic. And there's a minimalist on YouTube I love. And you may be thinking, Max, what does this have to do with sales outreach? I know, just bear with me. But he talks about this idea of batching processes. So the example he gives have to do with like dishes or laundry, right? So for example, if I wanted to wash, say, our bath towels, right? I'm not going to throw one in the washing machine, go sit, maybe I'd read a book, and then put it in the dryer and wait for it to dry, and then take it to the bathroom and fold it and then put it away. And then get the next towel, put it in the washer, wait for it to wash, put it in the dryer and wait, and so on. Like, you would think I was crazy for doing that, right? I think a lot of us do that with prospecting, right? Where it's just one at a time and it is laborious. Instead, we recommend doing everything all at once. Each part of the process, you put all the towels in the washing machine and then you run it. Then you put all the towels in the dryer to run the load. And then you fold them all at the same time and you carry them all in one nice, beautiful stack and you put them in the cabinet or wherever they live in your house. And then you're done, right? The same idea would happen for your scale, for your outreach, right? So for example, when you are doing your prospect research, do it all at one time. Don't do it individually, right? So then you can build out a huge list. And then you're going to want to automate your entire outreach and then do all your follow-up in some sort of process. So whether that's mixed in, whether it's all at the very end of the process, it's totally up to you. But that will save you so much time. And this is the same process that we run for our clients, right? So one thing I do want to get into more like the technical side of things here. On the list, I talked about cleaning the list. We can skip that. In terms of ramp up, so the best image I've seen for this, if you're not familiar with the world of email, it's totally okay. I was not familiar with email automation before I started working at NerdWise, but I can catch you up to speed real fast. Number one, there are certain rules that emails have to follow, right? So there's a lot of technical things that you have to have set up on the back end, like SPF records and DMARC and DKIM records and so forth. Those are all important, and there are plenty of blog posts out there. If it feels like uncharted waters to you, that's okay. But super important to have those set up, and we'd be happy to discuss that as well if you need help with it. The next thing that's really important is your ramp up period. So it's been a minute, but I used to be a runner and I would go run with friends of mine. I ended up running a couple half marathons. I didn't make it to the full 26.2, but 13.1 miles was enough for me. And anytime I went for a run, I always stretched before my run. I wouldn't just like walk out the door and start bounding down the street. Instead, you stretch the calves, the quads, the glutes, etc. before you begin running. The ramp up is the exact same thing. Now, if you're not a runner or you're not into working out, well, then just forget that idea, right? But you can't go from 0 to 60 immediately. It takes a second. And so what we really encourage all of our clients to do, and the same process we run, is basically begin slowly increasing your ramp up. And this process will ensure that as email servers are talking to each other, I mean, they're all talking to each other to make sure, like, if you ever have a message that automatically goes to spam from someone else, like if you were to go check your spam folder, why do theirs go to spam and others don't? Well, the ramp up process ensures that you don't do that, right? Basically ramping it up in such a way that these email servers say, this person has a positive reputation. They are beginning to send more and more emails, and we're okay with that. It's what a human would do. It's not done by automation, right? And that's going to be necessary whether you're sending through your domain or outside of it. You have to ramp it up. If you immediately start sending to hundreds or thousands at a time, you're gonna burn the domain, and you're gonna have to go get another one, right? So you got to ramp it up. Another thing that avoids spam filters is going after the right audience. So if someone were to come to me selling software for CFOs, isn't that relevant to me? I'm in sales, right? So I don't mark people as spam as a rule, but someone else probably would if it's not applicable to them. So having really targeted lists and targeted messaging, along with a ramp up, make sure you avoid the spam filter and people actually respond much more often to your campaigns. So here's a little bit about lead scoring and kind of diving in on the technical side of things. So if you're not much of like a marketer or a technical person, That's okay. I'll kind of detail that here. This is a peek into what our lead scoring app looks like. But lead scoring, like I was detailing earlier, is essentially understanding which prospects are showing the most interest and building out a process internally that makes sense to you and your business, where you're able to understand like who is showing the not only the most interest, but who do we want to go after and weighting those appropriately. So you would essentially run an algorithm, right? Where CEOs and anyone in the C-suite is weighted higher than those further down the chain. And then maybe company size also has an impact on that algorithm. And you can kind of build these out within most lead scoring applications. I know the word algorithm could be a little bit scary if you're not used to operating with one or using one, but you think in terms of these all the time, right? Where it's like, if I drive this way, it will be faster. If I use Google Maps versus Apple Maps, it will be different, right? The experience, you're used to using algorithms. And so this is just another version of that. In terms of actually using it, right? So once you build out the algorithm and you build out your lead scoring process on what makes sense, using it can look like strategic use and tactical use. The strategic use is going to be something like what you see here, where you've got all sorts of lines and graphs and pie charts and so forth, where you're getting the most data. That's really useful information as your overall go-to-market strategy. So if you are leading a team or leading a company, you're going to want to know that. If you are a sales development rep or a full cycle AE and you're booking meetings, good to know, but not super helpful in your day-to-day and getting some appointments booked, right? That's going to be more on the tactical side, where you want to be able to set up a process to get real-time notifications or one by one, where it says, so let's say you were prospecting towards me and I started showing interest but hadn't responded yet, where it says Max Herman is showing interest and has the ability where your lead scoring app has the ability to let you follow through to each individual person, and you don't have to hunt through the dashboard to go find those people, but gives you like, maybe it's an Excel spreadsheet where you follow up on, maybe it's in the app, so forth. And then you assign a score to all of that based off of their engagement, based off of how you're connecting with them, based on what company they're at, and so forth. This is all going to be focused largely on a more demand generation model, an account-based marketing model. So performance and KPIs. How do you know, especially if you've never done this before, to provide scale to your process, how do you know if you're doing a good job? Like, you can be doing a good job and not get a lot of upfront meetings. And so the feedback loop can be really limited. And so here are some benchmarks that I recommend looking towards. Number one is your open rate. We highly recommend that you've got to be above a 50% open rate. We typically see for our clients and for our own campaigns, somewhere between a 60 to 70, sometimes 80% open rate. If you're getting below that, it could mean a few things. It could mean you're going towards the wrong audience. It could mean the subject line is not interesting enough for someone to click on the message. And it could mean that your domain is having trouble. So 50% open rate or better, definitely necessary. Anything less than that, we should talk, right? Because it really could mean something serious, or it could just mean a simple, easy fix, but definitely something to pay attention to. So if you're having a high bounce rate or you're of low deliverability on your messages, that could be a cause for a low open rate. And then the next conundrum is, like, it seems like fixing open rate is a simpler problem than it is for low response rate. But say you got great open rates, you're at 60, 70% open rates, but you're not getting enough responses. Now it's into the actual copy of your cadence, right? Are you creating a compelling offer? Are you wording your email in such a way that they're not, their eyes haven't glazed over after the third paragraph, right? Is it short, concise, and creates value for them? Those are going to be really key. So understanding your audience and what they care about is really helpful towards actually getting more responses. And I mean, there can be nuance to actually how you structure your offer and things like that, or your call to action. And I've got several thoughts from the data that I've seen for our own clients, but that can be an indicator when you're seeing high opens but low responses, that your copywriting needs some love. And then when you're trying to deliver more responses or leads, like, it's just a matter of ABC testing and on down the line, but testing different offers, testing different ways you introduce yourself in your campaigns, the length of campaign. There is probably no one right way to do this. Be willing to be flexible and to test constantly. The more you can do that, and then even retarget to the same people later on, the more you'll see more responses come in. Your audience is going to be its own way, have its own way of wanting to be engaged, right? And then tracking attribution is really, really key here. So we have ways that we will integrate within CRMs to help sales teams track this kind of information. It could be as simple as adding a BCC function to all of your outreach, where every bit of outreach is recorded into the CRM. We do have direct outreach direct integrations with certain CRMs, but you want to make sure you have something like that set up so that when that deal closes, however many weeks or months from now, you can look back and say, that came from my campaign. I know exactly when that happened and where all that came from. So tracking attribution and having good data hygiene is really helpful. And then in terms of retargeting and analyzing your data, something that I like to do for a lot of our clients in terms of for analyzing the data. So I'll pull an Excel spreadsheet. I will pull both open rates and click-through rate. Essentially, what this means is I'm able to pull this over and basically make a graph or a chart in Excel and actually track, this title is performing the best, or this industry is performing the best if we did a mixed industry campaign. And this will allow you to better see, which spots are worth retargeting towards and continuing to re-engage. And to the question we got earlier, typically, whenever I want to re-engage someone, I will do it 45 to 90 days. Typically 60 days is like my go-to, but 45 to 90 days later for a retargeting. And I'll base that upon who's showing the most interest from that spreadsheet. So that was a lot. It was I kind of came up with that on the spot, but that's what I've done in the past. And so that's really the lion's share of the conversation here. And, in terms of like what to do next, there could be a lot of thoughts here. Like if this seems too complicated or too time consuming, or gosh, how do I know if I'm doing this correct? Or you may be jumping to, can I outsource this? Or can I get a junior member of my team to own this? If those are the thoughts you're having, just drop your email in the chat. We'd love to have more strategic conversation with you. And look, I on a personal note, if I can help anyone by offering just, off the cuff feedback, I'm happy to do that as well. But these are typically, in our conversations, like where people are thinking next. So thank you so much for coming to my TED Talk. See ya.